Misasha, do you ever think about quitting this podcast?
Oh, I thought you were going to say quitting in general. It's like all the time.
2026
quitting so
out.
many things. Quitting so many things. Okay, sorry. Specifically this podcast. You know, that is a really nuanced question because I don't think that I ever would think of that by myself, right? Like, I don't think that there is a moment where I'm like, you know what, Sarah, we have said everything we could possibly say. And I think, you know, have there been times where I've been more discouraged about the podcast? Not the podcast, like what we do, but the podcast out in the world. Yeah. But as I think about where we are in 2026 right now, I think if we don't have this podcast, if we don't have a way to express our voice, then authoritarianism is winning, right? Then fascism is winning.
If this, then that.
You know, I love a good logic.
Bit of a leap, but yes, yeah, that was a big one. But I get you.
No, but you know, I think like this is the plan, right? To silence voices, to have less conversation, to have people forget about critical thinking. And I think that's all things we stand for and all things that we do, especially for those who come after us. And so that's why I think it's so important to have this podcast. But what about you, Sarah? Do you ever think about quitting this podcast?
I mean, no, I don't. Like, I think I would quit any social media promotion for the podcast. I may have already soft quit that already. And that's the hard part, is making sure that we get the word out about this show and about the conversations we have. But I love what we do. I think I echo everything you said about why it's important. And I also think it forces me to pay attention and constantly be thinking about what are the things that we can be doing to learn more, to cut through all the noise, to really think about the information that we're being given. And I love being able to highlight more nuance, like you said, like voices, thought thinkers, people who are doing cool things, and learning about ways that people continue to show up, because I think it also gives me a lot of hope during times like now. So no, also you and I are never, ever going to run out of things to talk about. Like, based on each of our partners who are like, do you guys ever stop talking to each other? The answer is no, we don't. I'm sorry. That's just not a thing. So no. Okay, good. We're in it.
Right. We are.
I have a question for you though, because while we say we are in it, with this recording, basically we're celebrating the 7th anniversary of our show. Woot woot. But over the last 7 years, a lot has changed, right? Our listenership has changed. The world has changed. We have changed. There's no way, you know, the only constant in this life is changed. And when we launched, we sort of joked that we were best friends throwing a mic in front of our faces, and we would have like 5 people all related to us be the only listeners. Here we are, fast forward hundreds and thousands of downloads later. You know, we're still going, especially we saw that uptick after George Floyd's murder. And then we're seeing different changes in listenership with the backlash against DEI to this very open reversal of our human rights right now. Like, there's been a lot that has shifted that we continue to navigate conversations through. And I feel like because of that, how people engage with information has by necessity also changed. And so I wanted to ask you, the only podcast listener of the two of us, how have your podcast listening habits changed in real life? And how do you think that impacts like what our listeners might be experiencing as well?
First, I want to back up. Like, why am I the only podcast listener of the two of us? I'm just, you know, asking for all the friends.
I have learned that I am a visual learner. And so if I am listening to something auditorily, I somehow can shut off my hearing. It's like the auditory brain does not pay attention if my visual stuff is elsewhere. So I know a lot of people listen to podcasts and they can fold laundry. My brain will just start folding laundry and like not listen intentionally. So I actually have to be 100% focused when I'm listening to something. And so it's either 2 times speed. So if all the webinars and the endless webinars and the podcasts that I get sent, I have to listen to them like grinning and bearing, sitting 2 times speed to get through it, or I skim a transcript super fast. So that also, by the way, I think played into why we published a book. Maybe this conversation happened in that period where we were like, not everybody listens to podcasts and we want to get our message out. And you're like, you mean like yourself? Yes, that's why we wrote a book, because some people need to read. So that is actually how I'm wired. I respect and love the medium, but I will say that is not my primary place of information consumption.
Okay. There. Thanks for
No judgment, all statement.
I'm not going to guarantee what everyone else is going to do, but I'm not judging you for that.
You hypocrite. How can you have a podcast? I can talk real well.
Yes. So I listen on two times speed too, because and it annoys my kids so much because they're like, what is happening when they get into a car? And also they're like, what is up with you and true crime? So I will say over the last 7 years, and especially I will say in the last year, my podcast listening has changed some. Like I really have to filter out a lot of the news. And because there are a couple ones that I really love, like Deep State Radio, because they are like run by like people who have a lot of insight into the government because they were in the government. And so the news filtered through them is an interesting take on the news. But I can't listen to regular news updates. I think like I have really cut back on that. And instead, I have turned to humor, fashion, and like true crime miniseries. Like, I don't know, like the Dateline people produce like really like 6 episode ones. And I'm like, great. It's like binge watching a TV show, right? Like it's a very sort of finite experience. And that's not for entertainment. That's more because like people interest me and the thought process, like why people do what they do is very interesting to me. But yeah, I will say it's been less news. It's been more sort of looking for levity in a lot of ways, or people who have a unique lens on the news, or a unique lens that is going to make you laugh along with it. Like, why do we love memes so much, right? Like, similar concept, because stuff out there is really rough. So, how do we find those breaks that we need?
Well, so then I have this follow-up question then. As your listening has changed and you're finding that this is what you're drawn to, what did you expect when we launched our podcast 7 years ago? Like, what did you think it was going to be versus where we are today?
That's a, I was like 7 years ago, it was like a dream. Like that was Trump 1.0. Like we still had adults in the room. Like I feel like this is like an alternate reality now. Like who were you before you had kids, Sarah? It's kind of like a similar question.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I thought it would be sort of a way for us to have a platform to talk about the conversations that we knew were out there, but that we weren't hearing, right? Like, and I think it fundamentally still is that. It's just through different lenses at times. I think over these past 7 years, I think, first of all, we found our voice in real ways and realized that, like, this isn't going to appeal to everyone, right? Like from our original title of Dear White Women, like that obviously is, people have strong opinions about it and it's never like, oh, that one's fine. And I think like similarly, like what we talk about and the fact that we talk about these things won't appeal to everyone. But I do think the people that it appeals to, it really appeals to. And so I think that's what I underestimated, I think. And it's really been reinforced since that point of like why it's so important to have a point of view, like not everyone's going to like us. And I think that's something we consistently model for our kids as well, right? Like it's really important to have a point of view, and it's really important to have principles and have ethics and, and stand and fight for what.
And not think that when you walk down Fifth Avenue, you can just like shoot people and your followers will still like you.
I mean, as a hypothetical like example, yeah. But to fight for what we believe, right? So I think I didn't think it would come out this strongly, right? Like, if that makes sense, like this much of like an activist position, because I would have never considered myself that. And so, but I feel like this has been a way that we are activists. But what about you? Like,
whoa, wait, seriously? I've literally never heard you say that. And we talk a lot, as we established previously.
Really? I've never said that. I feel like it is though. Like I feel like we've written chapters in books where we talk about it.
Oh yeah, we did. We do have this chapter on cyber activism in like a whole like adult like educational textbook. We actually wrote that.
But I think like activism takes many forms, right? And I think we have been conditioned to think like activism is out in the streets, at big marches and rallies. And there are so many different forms of activism that I've seen, especially in Trump 2.0, that like I'm really proud that we're part of that. I think we absolutely are. So that is sort of I wish it wasn't this way. Like, I wish we would have run out of stuff to say because we were in some, like, better place in terms of like, we are in the arc bending away from justice part right now. Right. But I'm proud that we're in the fight to like get the arc moving back. So, what about you though? Like, I mean, it's been 7 years, right? What were you thinking? And like, how has that changed?
I let my hair go gray. So there's been in the duration of this, and I now have like older teenagers. So I feel like by necessity, my personal life has shifted as well as like the kids grow and they, get more clear on their identity and they pay attention to what's going on in the world. Our show has changed, right? Like I found out my kids were listening to our old show, which I was like, really? I didn't know this. Like that's neat. They sign up for the email lists. I am actually thrilled that we made the branding shift to what do you mean by that? We did that, I think, over the last year. I don't feel like it wasn't just a title change. I feel like it let us move from having established a really solid foundation in what racial justice looks like, where like the original form of systems that hurt people kind of showed up in our country. And I think because of the show, I was able to get a really solid understanding, like a self-based education, what we weren't taught in school, what I certainly wasn't taught in school. And I think the more we learned, and the more I sort of, did continue to do more work in positive psych and this idea of well-being, I felt like with the rebrand, we were able to capture and expand our conversations, like the reality that there's so many complicated systems that are at play, like working together in our country. And we can start looking for what we want to create, which is a world, not just understanding why negative things have happened before and why people are mean to each other, basically, and how they are mean, but like, what are we aiming towards? And I think that that was something you always emphasized is like, we don't want to just say what we're against. We really want to say what we're for. And if what we are for is well-being for everybody, like being able to expand conversations to understand more nuances, but behind like, what does it mean when we even say that? And like, what does it mean when we're fatigued? And how do we address like this idea of sustainably using our voices and all of these other parts of the conversation? I feel like it's adapted and reflected our change, my change, certainly as a human being.
Can I ask you a question about this though? No, I'm curious, right? Because I think like when I think about the branding shift from Dear White Women to what do you mean by that? And I think about the expansion of that conversation that we were originally having with white women, but how that conversation necessarily has to include all of us, right? For there to be those systems changes that you were talking about. I'm curious, like, in the 7 years since we've started doing this, you are obviously, we still find ourselves in groups of white women, right? What has changed for you in groups of white women? Like, has there been a shift? Like, I'm not talking about the group itself, but how you perceive the group, right? And what you're willing to say or not say, or like now that you have 7 years of knowledge of like having all these conversations and stuff, like, I'm curious, like, how has that changed?
Ooh, so I'm going to be real honest here. So I would say when we first started this work and learning more, I was the gung ho. I want to talk about race to everybody. And like, I got really serious. I got very, like, I could see the through line in kind of every interaction in society. I felt like when George Floyd was murdered, I will say this is like awful. I'm going to totally admit this though. I remember walking into the orthodontist and there was a black woman sitting there and I kind of want a total stranger. And I had to stop myself from saying anything like, wow, how are you doing? Because that is so freaking inappropriate. But I had this urge to be like, I see you, I feel you, I'm sorry. Like we're all in this together. And so I went through this zealous phase, I think. And then I felt like I grew to understand how how racism showed up in me, or like how my perceptions and what I was biased around, like I got humbled again, like, a little bit, you think you know everything. Then you go through and you're like, wow, there's so much I don't know. So I did earn the reputation of being the person who always talks about these sorts of things. And I think through that process, it became clear who I could actually be myself. Like it explained a lot as a multiracial, multi-ethnic person, also with like immigrant husband, immigrant mom, like kids with non-apparent disabilities. Like we are different. And I became very clear on different levels of trust I have for people and who I still show up as that person. I'm still the kind, sort of quirky, playful, person who needs Misasha's help to have a fashionable outfit on at any given time.
Well, apparently I'm being replaced by AI on this front.
I
So
just asked one simple question
I'm
about
just
a
saying.
summit I'm emceeing in Portugal in May. And so that's all. Don't worry. I will need your advice.
Okay.
So I feel like it actually, a lot of our work helped me be honest with myself about how I felt about my place in community and what I wanted in the people around me. And it doesn't matter so much the race of the people I've discovered, but it was really about the mindset of those who are willing to also use their voice, who are willing to stand up for one another and have this understanding that the world is a big place and we need to look out for each other because we don't do it alone. And I think that that has shifted in my personal life. I don't actually remember your original question anymore, but I feel like that process of looking outward to see the systems turned inward to see myself and realize like the connection between the two much more clearly and rapidly, sort of the more experience I've had in this show and hosting and the conversations and reading.
I like it. Yeah, my original question was like, how do you show up differently in those groups of white women?
I don't think I have that many groups of white women left. I have a lot of individual friendships now.
Yeah.
Right. I miss a group. I got to tell you, like, that's my big, all the research shows that relationships are the long-term, cornerstone of your health and happiness. And I feel like I am at a stage personally where I'm recreating what that looks like. I don't know where everybody is on that. I know that that's an important topic of conversation societally right now with so many popular books that are out there, but I'm in it too. I feel like learning this really helped me reshape things and appreciate even opportunities like going to do work. Like it's not so much the opportunity to do the work, but the relationships you get to build in the projects that you get to do. So I'm seeing that and appreciating that. But I feel like maybe it was at some stage, sometime in our show 5 years ago, where I feel like I said something like it slipped out where I was like, us, when we were referring to the white women, I don't, and you gave me a little bit of a hard time about that because you're like, do you remember you're Japanese? I don't see myself as that anymore. I feel very grounded in my Japanese culture, my Japanese identity, as well as white. And I feel like I almost became more myself. Like my childhood self has returned where I embraced many cultures.
I think for me, I still have like a similar, well, I don't have many circles of, I have no circles of white friends. Like, oh,
Yes, you came to Denver and you went with me to pick up my kids at a thing and you were like, OMG, I actually have not been around this many white people.
but it's true. And, based on where I live is a heavily East Asian and South Asian population. And, my kids are not that, right? And I still feel like I know who to trust. I think when you said trust, right? Like I think that has been sort of the biggest thing. And I feel like prior to us starting our show, like I come in with like a lack of trust because I'm kind of like, how do you see my kids? How do you see my family? Do you even see us as a family?
And reminder for everybody who is new to this, and this is your first episode, describe why.
Yeah, my husband's black, so my kids are black, Asian, and white, and black, Japanese, and white to be specific. And we're always sort of the recognizable onlys or, one of few, right? And I think now, and then when George Floyd was murdered, there was an uptick in people like suddenly seeing us. And then now there's a downturn and, people don't see us anymore. And I don't feel a way about that for myself. I feel a way about that for my kids. And I feel like I know who I can trust, and that's a small circle. And I don't kind of, how you were saying that you spent this time at the start sort of like being the person who was like very vocal about things. Like I have realized that I love having our conversations and I love telling people about our conversation or the conversations that we have on the podcast. And I love the stuff that I get to do with kids, but I don't necessarily spend time trying to educate like adults in my personal circles about that. Because I feel like, it's tiring and people feel a way about things. And especially now in the last year and a half, people have become very vocal about things that they previously did not feel like they could say. And so I want to save our impact for where there is the impact, right? Where we can make change.
I mean, as we go forward, then what kind of conversations and topics are you interested in having? Like what would be the best, most ideal sort of direction that we would head in on this show? or offline and encouraging people in community.
I think people sometimes get caught up in get stuck in inertia, right? Get stuck in inertia because you feel like I either need to do this big grand thing or I do nothing. And I feel like, and I've said this a number of times, but I feel like community is so important right now. Like not only, finding your community, but supporting the community that you live in and really finding out who needs help and how you can help them, right? Because I think that's how you affect change, right? And I want to, and this is like a favorite thing of mine too. I really want to model how we ask questions and how we continue to ask questions of the things that are hurting all of us, right? Like how to fight against the forces that would rather us be silent, right? And be silent and separated and sick and weak. And because there is power in the alternative, right? And we can do this. And I feel very strongly that when I talk to kids, they're great at questions, right? They ask all the questions. They have no filter around the questions. And those are the questions we should be asking. And adults will be like, I don't know, because I think like this person might think this thing and this person might think this thing. And I want to have those conversations that encourage us to think bigger, right? To think smaller on the community level, but bigger as like, how does this impact all of us? So
I like that. I wonder if we should have a segment where you bring back, because you regularly speak to children directly, to parents, some of the best questions, like, top 5 hits from kids' questions.
Ooh, that would be fun. We should do that. But okay, so what about you though? Like, what does this next sort of phase feel like for you? Like, what are those conversations that you really want to have?
I mean, I'm a nerd for well-being, and I think having been immersed in the science and the field of positive psych sort of as a enthusiast, probably for closer to 2 decades than less, right? Like I forget how much I assume that everybody understands what it takes to live a good life and that they know the science and that they're doing all these things. And I forget that they're not, that like sometimes changing up life can feel difficult. And so they don't do some simple tweaks that can make a big difference. I had an old laptop that someone gave to my kid pre-pandemic, and it was just sitting here unused because now the school gives them laptops. My friend basically said the person who cleans her gym, actually, Kristen Olson, if you're listening, this is a shout out to you. She has a podcast called Turmeric and Tequila. Phenomenal energy, just basically highlighting varsity humans in her words. But she said, look, someone at the gym like needs a laptop to both look for a job and then go to online school. And I literally was like, oh, I actually have a laptop that I was going to recycle. Why don't we just clean it up, make the connection and do that? And now she's been able to attend online school. And I share this not for any, like, I may cut this from the podcast. I don't share this for like, wow, I did something great. But like when you make those connections, like there's a reason these mutual aid societies are so powerful and impactful. It's because you're helping someone directly in your community with what may feel like very little to you, but makes a tremendous difference to someone else. And that's how we look out for each other, because you never know when that is going to come around to help you, because we all need help sometimes, right? Like we're all in this together. So I think those little opportunities, but then also any chance I can nerd out to the leading practitioners and the researchers who are highlighting like what is the science between like that is being revealed about how we can thrive. Yeah, I'd love to bring more of that on so people can learn directly and make changes to sort of help themselves be happy, because it's a hard time right now.
Yeah, I love that.
Well, anything else?
Here's hoping we still have independent media so we can come back in a year, talk about how great
Year
those
8.
midterms were, people. So, yeah.
Totally. Well, if you're either a new listener or maybe if you're an old listener, we'd love to know what would keep you coming back for more from us. We have our ideas. Let us know. What do you need from us right now? Email us at hello@whatdoyoumeanbythat.com, and that goes straight to us. It's just the two of us. We'd love to hear. Here's to a good year ahead. You've been listening to What Do You Mean By That? A show dedicated to being better humans and getting loud for all of us. Hat tip to Sarah's daughter for the logo, and huge thanks to Misasha's son for our incredible theme music. Find out more and subscribe to our newsletter at whatdoyoumeanbythat.com, because as always, it's all of us or it's none of us.